So we are now in the 2024 Subaru BRZ Eyesight, and this particular car we have is the automatic version. Now let's get the facts straight first. What you have here is a 2.4-liter boxer engine making 237 horsepower and 250 Newton meters of torque, paired to a 6-speed automatic. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 6.8 seconds. For the manual version, you can do it in 6.3. But given the fact that I'm not exactly great at manuals, I think I would do best in this automatic. Top speed 216 kilometers per hour, in the manual 226. Now, for the driving impressions, let's start with the power. 237 and 250, excellent for the weight of this vehicle. This only comes in at around 1,300 kilograms, and even if there's more than one person in the car, this is more than enough fun. For the sound it makes, honestly, it isn't too throaty, but it really has meat to it. And if you're driving this normally, it's pretty quiet, it's pretty serene in here, which is actually very surprising for a sporty car such as this one. But give it some gas. Oh yeah, that thing really screams a bit. Next would be the handling, and this is something that you would definitely want to know if you're in the market for this vehicle. And handling is truly excellent. The car feels incredibly balanced. You sit nice and low. You can also lower your seats all the way to give you a better driving position, as well as a lower center of gravity. And of course, you have that boxer engine, which lowers your center of gravity even more. And pushing this car over corners, the rear end gets really playful. If you want to take this into the track though, you'll find that it's definitely not as playful as a GR86, which means you can get better lap times. And so if you are looking for a car for a little bit less fun but a little bit more precisement, then yes, this may be the car for you. As you throw this car around corners too, you feel very connected to the steering and the wheels up front. However, what I do have to say that Subaru could probably improve on is the butt feel. Yeah, it doesn't communicate that well when it comes to the bottom of the vehicle. Now let's touch on the transmission you have in here. I've mentioned earlier that I'm not exactly great at driving manuals, but I can drive a manual. So yes, somehow I can still compare automatics to manuals. And in this case at least, the automatic that they have here, I must say that it's definitely not as precise, it's definitely not as snappy and quick as a dual clutch transmission, but you get the transmission that is very smooth and it is still responsive enough. You also get paddle shifters in here, which at command can change gears. I would say there's a little bit of a delay, but it's so tiny that you never really find yourself wanting to get the 6-speed in the BRZ. Now, if you daily drive this vehicle, I think that it is a perfect companion, and it is the perfect tiny 2-door car that you can get because the ride is good. It doesn't hurt. It's also pretty quiet in here. You want to take this on the highway, it only starts to get loud at around 80 or 90 kilometers per hour. It's a pretty refined car. It may not be as playful as the likes of a Mazda MX-5 or a Miata, but this is all you ever need. This is all the fun that you will ever ask for while getting all the creature comforts that a modern car can give you. Now, if you do stupid things with this car, such as what I'm doing now, you find that traction control does cut in pretty often, but you do have a couple of buttons here by the center which easily changes that. You can turn off traction control in itself, and you even have this thing called a track mode, which obviously also turns off traction control. And plus points to Subaru because they change your rev counter display if you do enable track mode. Now let's go back to the handling of this vehicle. This now uses an electronic power steering system, and Subaru did that pretty much because they don't have a choice to do that, because they have to give you your Eyesight technology. And with Eyesight includes your lane keeping assist, your adaptive cruise control. So they need this electronic steering system. That way they can also electronically control the wheel and your wheels down the front in case you are veering out of your lane. And speaking of that too, it is a pretty good system. I've always said this in my videos, Eyesight is probably the best when it comes to advanced driver assistance systems, and I'm very happy that for the Subaru BRZ and the Toyota GR86 collaboration, they chose to stick with Subaru's Eyesight system. This works extremely well even in low-speed situations, in stop-and-go situations, as well as highway situations. This is pretty much all you will ever need. When you drive these two-door sports car, visibility usually comes at a very huge premium. And yes, that is the case with the BRZ because you barely see anything out of these quarter panels at the rear. However, with that aside, everything else is pretty good here. Your front visibility, that's okay. Your side visibility, that's also okay. And while you don't really see too much out of the rear, you have an incredibly clear reverse camera inside your infotainment screen, which again brings me back to the point of this being a very practical dailyable car, even though it is a pretty cramped two-door vehicle. And to further prove that point, I'm just gonna rotate the camera a little bit here and see. This whole time we were hooning this car, there's 3 of us in here, and guys, what can you say? Is it okay?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we're gonna floor it even more. Finally, what I would like to add here that really adds into the practicality aspect of the Subaru BRZ is its braking as well as its ground clearance, because a lot of these performance-oriented vehicles, they have super sensitive brakes, right, which gets really jerky inside city speeds. But for this one, while it is firm, it's pretty progressive and you can easily modulate it to make sure it doesn't get jerky in slow speeds. And also for your ground clearance, you have a ground clearance of 130 millimeters, which is definitely more than enough for Manila roads, and it will not scrape in most humps, it will not scrape in most ramps unless you ate a little bit too much or maybe your passenger did. With that said though, let's move on to the exterior as well as the interior of the Subaru BRZ. Now that we have the car right here beside us, I want to talk about its styling. So look at the front end of this vehicle. Yes, you know that it looks sporty in terms of the proportions of it, given the fact that it has a pretty long hood in relation to the rear overhang, but I also like how Subaru didn't go all out, giving you a very aggressive look. It just looks pretty classy. The bumper right there, yes, there's a couple of slats on it, but nothing too aggressive, especially if you compare it to the GR86. The lighting assembly is also slightly different. Yes, these are LED headlights with DRL, but again, the DRLs are also slightly different compared to the GR86. Towards the side of the vehicle, you'll also see that if you look down below, right here by the bumper, that's where Subaru placed your turn signal repeaters instead of putting them in the conventional location, which is by the wing mirrors. Now, for these wheel arches, you can also notice that they can probably go a little bit lower without rubbing, but as it is too, I think it really does add to the very classy appeal that this car isn't too low. That 130 millimeters of ground clearance is just about right. Your rims, these are 18 inches wrapped in a set of Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires, and these rims too, if you look closely, they look pretty similar to what you'd find in the Toyota GR Yaris. Anyway, other things here by the side include a set of like these vents by the front fenders, and if you take a closer look at the rear fenders right here, there's even a tiny extension to it. I believe that this is probably for regulations, that way the wheels themselves don't really stick out of the body of the vehicle. The rear of the BRZ gets a pretty toned down spoiler, a ducktail spoiler. It isn't as aggressive as what you would find with the GR86, but again, it is very in shape and in tune with the whole classy appeal of this vehicle. The tail lamps, those are definitely from Subaru, surely not from Toyota. So you have that C shape over there, which is again very similar to some other Subaru models. And if you do look down below, you also get a set of real dual exhaust tips. Now, let's open up this trunk, and yes, this car does have a trunk, but it is pretty tiny. You're looking at around 200 liters of space only, and that is because there is a massive full-size spare tire in there. Yes, you can also put things inside that spare tire since it is facing down, but the overall this isn't really the most practical when it comes to storage spaces. However, since you do get an extra set of jump seats there by the rear, which you probably wouldn't use very often, you can also fold down these seats 100-100 or just, fold them flat, all in all, to expand your space. Moving inside here, first check the door thud as usual. And yes, that's what I really like about these two-door coupes. Given their longer, heavier doors, they give off a pretty nice sounding door thud. Anyway, the interior of the Subaru BRZ, you really can tell that it is a collaboration between them and Toyota because, well, the rest of it is very Subaru-like, including the center touchscreen. The steering wheel itself, that's giving very hard Toyota vibes. You have your buttons right here for your advanced driver assistance systems, your audio controls, and especially so, the cruise control knob. That is definitely from Toyota. Anyway, let's go back to that later. First, your digital instrument cluster, very easy to read, also customizable depending on which drive mode you are, which includes this traction control off plus track mode. Then you also have this 8-inch touchscreen by the center with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now the materials in here, yes, there is a lot of plastic in it, but it feels pretty well built. And you also have some of the suede on it. So you get some suede here by the top of the dashboard, and you also get some suede by the side of the doors. But that's not the only place you'll find suede, because if you look at your seats, these bucket seats, which hug you pretty well, they're also partly suede. So the center areas are all suede, the sides, they are leather. Plus, there's even red stitching on it, which really differentiates it from the Toyota GR86. Now going back to the steering wheel, it is leather wrapped, there's also red stitching, and I like the size of it. It's pretty good for a sporty vehicle. It also feels very sporty. Even like the girth of it, it's not too girthy, which is really perfect. Behind it is a set of paddle shifters too, which are also pretty well made. Now let's move down here and you get a regular shifter, although the shape of the shifter itself, they made it in such a way that it'll look like a manual shifter. So even if you get an automatic, maybe you wouldn't feel as bad. But yeah, anyway, climate control system, regular parking brake. For cubbies, you get one here by the center, you get another one by the side, and you can even open up the center one, which reveals 2 extra cup holders. For safety, you get Subaru's Eyesight technology, so you get adaptive cruise control, you get autonomous emergency braking, you have rear automated braking, and others. Plus, you also get 6 airbags. So yes, as mentioned, the Subaru BRZ does have a set of jump seats at the back, but yes, they are only for children or very, very, very small adults like me. Now, to get back here, so you just grab a handle by the seat and this entire thing just slides forward and you kind of just cram yourself inside, and it's not the most pleasant thing in the world to do. But once you are back here, yeah, I mean, it is, I guess, doable for 5-minute long journeys, quick hops to the drive-thru, but I really wouldn't want to be sitting here for any sort of extended period of time. And that's because leg room is virtually non-existent. My feet are pretty much crushed under the front seats, and well, there's not much headroom here either. So the Subaru BRZ is surprisingly practical. It's pretty good fun to drive. It's also pretty fuel efficient, and damn, does it not look pretty classy and good. So how much does it cost? Well, this one here in this exact automatic trim costs 2,649,000 pesos, and I think for what you're getting, that is an excellent deal. But lately there has been this like promo going around somewhere where you can save as much as like 700,000 pesos on this car, which quite frankly makes it an absolute steal.